On one hand, you regret all your shortcomings, and you say, I wish it wasn't so. But at the same time, change is incremental. It does not happen. You don't turn from a sinner to a saint in 10 days, or certainly during the Ilah. After that, it's a process. And therefore, what you're looking at is, this is a process a process of change that I'm going to go about. This process might take 50 years. It might even take 200 years to reach there. Rav Eliyena says that tshuva means misyatzev al derech toiv. I'm heading in the right direction. And therefore people, after they regret everything and they express their aspiration to be perfect, now they have to come up with a practical plan. How will I become perfect? By very small incremental steps, no matter how long it will take.
Rabbi Zimmerman, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Good morning, it's my pleasure.
And welcome to Columbus, first time.
Yes, certainly.
Can you please tell us about your background and upbringing?
Okay, I grew up in Brooklyn, went to local elementary school, high school. Then I learned in Mir Yeshiva in Brooklyn by Reb Shmuel Birnbaum. Then I went to Eretz Yisrael, learned by Reb David Soloveitchik, got married, went back to Eretz Yisrael, learned there. Then I learned in Kollel in Monsey for 6 years. After that, I became the Rav of Kaladas Yeshurun of Monsey. That's Broyos Kela in Washington Heights, had a branch in Monsey. I was the Rav of the Monsey branch, and I was a Dayan in Washington Heights. Did that for 5 years. Then I opened my own shul in Monsey called Kal B'nai Ashkenaz. Also taught in Yeshivas Ar Sameach 14 years, to Asmicha program over there. Had a kollel in Lakewood, and taught in various other institutions. In the year 2008, I moved to Gateshead, England, to become the Rav of Gateshead. Gateshead is the Torah center of Europe, where all students come to learn over there. There are probably 800 yeshiva students and 600 seminary girls in a half a square mile. So it's largely like an academic town, like a college town. I was there till 2020, and in 2020, I became the Rav and the Av Bezin of Kehillas Federation of London. Brave to understand, the Federation is comprised of 45 shuls, and they're part of an umbrella organization, which I am the Rav of the umbrella organization. So I'm the Rav of the Rabbanim, not necessarily of the shuls, and I head its Bezin. We have a full Bezin. We do Chesed Mishpat, we do marriages and divorces, have a kashrus organization called the KF, has over 800 companies. We have a Chevra Kadisha, and we do full services.
Wow, tremendous. Well, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Mir Yeshiva, Reb Birnbaum.
Yes.
Zechat Tzaddik Lebracha. Can you talk about your relationship?
Shmuel Birnbaum, at that time, there was only one thing you could learn from him, was diligence. He used to come into the yeshiva at 6 a.m. and learn straight for 20 hours till 2 a.m.
Really?
Yes. But he used to apologize with tears in his eyes to us that he's failing us as a role model because he had had a heart attack a year before, and the doctor said he has to go to sleep every night because he used to come into yeshiva Sunday morning at 6 a.m. and learn straight till 2 a.m. Tuesday morning, 44 hours in a row, and then go home for 4 hours and then come back and learn another 44 hours. And now that he's only learning for 20 hours in a row, he's a bad role model to the students in diligence. And I'm sorry to tell you, none of his students ever emulated his diligence, even after the heart attack, but that's how he felt about it. But the other thing he transmitted to people was his that learning is the most enjoyable thing in this world. He used to say that when he came to America, and they came from Mir in Poland, they felt that Torah cannot be transplanted in America. And he felt the exact opposite. He says, because Americans enjoy Olam Hazeh. They enjoy this world. They enjoy having fun. And there's nothing more enjoyable than learning Torah. So all I have to do is teach that to them. But the second they'll catch on, Torah will flourish to greater heights in America than it'll ever be anywhere else, because they like Olam Hazeh more than anything else. So that is thing. At that point, all we could see was his diligence. The last 6 years of his life, he had a second heart attack, and his heart stopped for 3-4 minutes. When he got up, he felt that he had died and he had been reborn, and he went in a different direction in life. He became outgoing, he became friendly, started raising money for causes. He got up and he said, how are young married people in Eretz Yisrael going to make Yom Tov? They don't have enough money. And he went out and raised $5 million when he got up. But that was a personality change at the end of his life, where he became outgoing, friendly, evolved in communal manners. When I learned by him, all you could see was sheer, unceasing diligence. One final story, I learned by him. I was a student, and my son-in-law was also a student. This was in the last year of his life. He had brain cancer. He was going for chemotherapy 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The wedding, the marriage to my daughter was on a Thursday night in Muncie, which is an hour and a half away from Brooklyn. And just out of respect, we came to invite him to the wedding. He never thought that he can attend, because this was the 3rd day of chemotherapy in the week, and he was very weak. And we came to the house, he was lying in bed. We told him we're getting married. You know, my daughters were getting married to your student. I'm also a student. And we're just coming to inform you about the wedding, but we realize you can't come. And he said, can't? There's nothing that stands in the way of will. If a person wants to do it, they could do it. So I said, do you want to do it? So he says, what do you mean? He says that you should treat a student like your son. That means that my son, that's the chassan, is getting married to my granddaughter, because you're also a student of mine. Which person wouldn't want to be at the wedding of his son to his granddaughter? So I said, okay, I see that you want to do it, and you feel that there's a will to do it. Can you, are you allowed to do it? Because it's not healthy. And he said, that's a big question. What I'd like you to do is make believe that you are officiating at the marriage. Set everything up, have everyone under the chuppah, and then call out my name. I will walk in through the back door. I'll officiate at the marriage, wearing gloves, and right after I finish officiating, I'll wish everyone mazel tov and walk out, because he couldn't get infections from anyone. So he traveled probably with the very last ounce of strength he had to come to a wedding an hour and a half away, be Misad Kedushin, leave before the end of the chuppah. And the reason is because nothing can stand in the way of will. And that's the legacy that he left me with. That's the memory I have. 10 months later, he died. 11th month later, I had my first grandchild from that wedding, and that grandchild is named after him.
Beautiful. What a story. Wow. You mentioned the notion of we could bring what we had in Europe to America, which reminds me, in camp, I remember one summer, every year in camp we had, sometimes they have this joke, that joke, this tagline or some shtick, whatever. And one summer in camp, there was like, whatever we do in camp, why? Because that's how they did it in Europe.
Yeah.
So, it was more of like, whatever, late Thomas, just making fun. But practically speaking, world was very different. Gashvias then was much more, and we could talk about today's Gashvias maybe in a different episode. But can you maybe get into the specifics? Was there any hadrach, any guidance he gave to Americans knowing what it was in Europe and how to best we can make Torah in America?
Like Europe.
Yeah.
He was interesting because he wasn't a person that was the good old days were so good. As a matter of fact, he used to constantly tell us that the average student in America is better than the average student in
Are you
Europe.
serious?
He felt the greatest people in Europe were greater than those in America.
But the average?
The average student is a bigger lamdan and understands Torah with more an analytical depth than anyone in Europe.
That's very empowering.
And that's the way he was, very positive, very empowering. And that's the impression he left. He did not bemoan the past. He never looked back. He rarely ever spoke about himself. The only time he could speak about is able to talk was Purim morning after Shacharis. He would reminisce a bit. He would talk about Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, the story of a dibuk, whatever. Other than that, he would never talk about himself. He would never ever talk about the past. He would say that learning is better now than it was before. I also learned by Reb Shmuel Brudny, who had the largest share in America at that time. There were 93 boys in his share. His son, Reb Elio Brudny, is a famous manik today, and I was Reb Eli's first student. I was in this class when the father was nifter, and Reb Eli took over. So I was in his first class. That was 45 years ago. And he also was he was far ahead of his time. He was totally positive. I remember it was Elul time, actually. And a boy was saying, you know, I'm a nothing. I'm not accomplishing anything. And he looked at him and he said, are you wearing tzitzis? He said, of course. He says, do you know what Chazal say about wearing tzitzis? He went through every Bavli. Then he went through every Yerushalmi. Then he said, Zayir. Then he said, did you wear tefillin this morning? And finally the boy said, Rebbe, I get your drift. So he was positive chinuch long before anyone else did so. And I want to tell you a story about him which left a tremendous impression upon me, to the point maybe that's why, one of the reasons why I went in the direction I went. This was on a Wednesday. He gave a shir. We're learning Bava Kama, Daf Tesamet Beis, about Hider Mitzvah at Shlish. To beautify a mitzvah, you should pay an extra third. And the Gemara has a question, is it a third milgav or milbar? Is it an additional third, or it's an additional 50%, which then it'll be a third? I did not understand the share. I was the youngest member of the share. I was 17 years old. And he used to come back in the afternoon to answer questions. And I asked him the question, and he explained it to me. He left. An hour later, he came back to Yeshiva, which he had never done in his life. And he said he's looking for the new young boy. So people found me. He said, I came to apologize to you. I said, what are you apologizing about? He says, when I gave the example, I explained to you how to do a shlish. I said, for example, if your sweater costs $2, is a shlish 67 cents, or is it another dollar? And you might have been insulted that I think that your sweater is only worth $2. It's probably worth a lot more, even $10. It was easily $20, but that's beside me. And therefore I came to apologize to you. This is Wednesday afternoon. He died early Sunday morning. When I went to the Shiva, and, I just told Rebbe Noyan, he says that you should know that my husband was having angina pains. And he said he has to go back to the yeshiva to apologize to a boy. And we said, listen, you have a heart condition and you're having angina pains and you should not go. And he says, how could I possibly feel that I insulted a person and be able to rest or to sleep? And therefore I have to go back to yeshiva. Now, I was not insulted. I was just happy that he would explain me the Gemara, and the other boys did not realize that I didn't understand the basics. But I saw such tremendous greatness in Torah and the effect that it has on Midas that it made a great impression on me.
Wow. What a great foundation, which is a good, great segue to our next segment. How did the Rav get to Gateshead?
I was recruited to become the Rav of Gateshead. The person who suggested my name was Rav Matisyahu Solomon.
Oh, wow.
I had met him in America, and somehow we connected on some level, although we're totally different. and kind of different backgrounds and different personalities and the like. And he recommended that he recommended me for the job. I was very, very skeptical to move a whole family. I have 8 children. At that time, my oldest daughter was married. My next son was already in Yeshiva Gedola, was away from home, but I moved with 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl, between 4 and 18 years old, and I was very, very skeptical. I went to Gateshead to see what it is. Then I went to try it out. The tryout was giving 18 shiurim to 18 different institutions, each one on what they were learning. Then, after that, they offered me the job, and then I went to Eretz Yisrael to ask a question, should I do it? Mm-hmm. One of the people I went to was Rav Elyashiv, the Gadol Adar.
Oh, wow.
And I said, should I do it? So he asked me, can you do it? So I said, that's not the question. Of course I can do it. The question is, should I do it? So he said, I don't know you, but can you do it? So I said, yes. He said, if you can do it, you have to do it. If you can do it, you have to do it. Mazel tov.
Oh, say that one more time.
He said, if you can do it, he said in Yiddish, if you could do it, musteristan, you have to do it. Mm-hmm. Musteristan, if you can do it, you have to do it. Mazel tov. So we got Apsak. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, I went to Rabbi Aaron Leibsteinen, and I said, I'm a candidate to be the Gates of Rav. And he said, you're not a candidate to be Rav. You are the Gates of Rav, because Rav Elyashiv said Mazel Tov. I can give you some advice of how to be a Rav. And I'll tell you something very, very interesting. Yeah. I told him Gated Rav becomes the head of the school system in Gateshead, which has primary schools, high schools, and all the whole entire school system. I am not a mechanech at all. I'm not a teacher by training. I'm a Rav. I'm a dayan. I've never taught a child. How could someone who has no experience in chinuch head a school system? And he said as follows. I said in Yiddish, but I'll say in English. He said, in a school, the teacher cares about the class. The principal cares about the school. Who's thinking about the children? Didn't know what to say. He said it with more force. Who is thinking about the children? I didn't answer. He said, you know who's thinking about the children? Nobody. You're going to think about the children, and that's how you're going to lead the school system. Mm-hmm. That was his lazy. And he said it with tremendous force, with tremendous feeling, that someone has to be there to think about the children, leave the curriculum to others, leave everything to experts. You look out for each child as an individual. And that was, so to speak, my mandate from him, and I tried to do so.
When I was learning Lakewood, I had the schus to see Ramat many times. And I know they just came out recently with a biography. Can you share perhaps a personal memory?
So if you look in the biography, there's a picture of me and him talking.
Oh, yeah.
And I never learned by him as a student, but I would use him as a Shulchan Aruch for Hashkafas. Mm-hmm. So here's a question I got. Person was diagnosed with skin cancer, stage 1. Very good prognosis, 95% cure rate. And the person wanted to know, what does Hashem want from him? Is he supposed to think that he's dying? Is a 95% cure rate. So I called Rav Matisyahu. And Rav Matisyahu said, if Hashem wanted the person to think he's dying, he would have given him an illness which has a 50-50, not a 95-5. Mm-hmm. So I said, so what is Hashem's message? Mm-hmm. He says, you know what Hashem's message is? This person is not appreciating the gift of life. He's taking life for granted. Hashem wants to give him a 5% chance to say, do not take life for granted. That is the message. Mm-hmm. Another thing I remember, he came to Gateshead. He was so weak at the end of his life in a wheelchair, and he came for a chasana. And I said, for grandchild's wedding, I said, why did you push yourself so hard? You know, he would have got married without you. As a matter of fact, as the Rav, I did every wedding. There was no such thing, Kate said, only the rabbi is Masata Kedushin. Oh, wow. I did about 250 weddings in my 12 years. over there. And so he said, people think that being a grandfather or a grandparent is a privilege. It's a responsibility too. And as long as I can fulfill this responsibility, I'm going to do it. And therefore that's how he looked at, at being a grandparent. And that's why I said, I used to, whenever I had a shaila, not in halacha, but rather in hashkafa, how do I present it to people? How am I supposed to look at it? I would turn to him.
Wow. Getting to the role of a bezdin,
Yes.
People think of bezdin like almost like, well, this person's suing this person, he's taking him to a din Torah, or someone's getting married, getting divorced, all these like headline type of cases. What's the real day-to-day job look like?
Well, again, in the Chayshei Mishpat division of our bezdin, that's exactly what it looks like. People are suing each other every day. Let's say do a din Torah probably twice a week. And yes, people are suing each other. There's nothing wrong with people suing each other. It's a lot better that people should come to a resolution rather than walking around that they have claims, real or imagined. And I'll tell you something very interesting. Many times we have the first session and everyone walks around, I'm 100% right, the other person is wrong. Once they hear each other, many times, I can't say many times, but yeah, many times, not most of the time, but many times, after they hear each other, they settle. Because for the first time, they realize that someone else has a point.
Who feels they're 100% right.
And who feels they're 100% right. They still think they're right, but at least they heard the other person.
And maybe there's something in between.
So this happens quite often. Most of the time, it goes till the very end. People ask me, how do we avoid showing up in bezdin? So I have two pieces of advice. The one is obvious. Before you enter a partnership or any situation, get everything in writing and make things clear. Most things happen, you go into something in good faith, and later there's disagreements, and it's not clear, and everyone has their perspective, and their perspective might have been true. Very rarely are people lying. They're coming from their perspective, and it was not clear from the beginning. And we have an expression, when you start a partnership, you treat each other like swindlers, then you'll leave as friends. But if you start as friends, you'll end up screaming swindler at each other.
Boy. Wow.
So that's step number one. But there's something else I learned. You can have everything clear, but you have to define what is the objective of this partnership. I was doing a din Torah, and there were partners for quite a bit of time, and they had differences of opinions. And they were screaming at each other, you're a liar, you're a swindler. And I said, could I stop the din Torah? Although I'm functioning as a dayan, but there's a Rav in me that I did a sermon right now. And the sermon was as follows. This partnership was doomed to fail from the beginning because one of you is an older person who's looking for capital appreciation. Another person is a young person who's looking for income.
Yeah.
And this partnership cannot work. The question is, how did it last so long? It is, you know why? Because you're not a liar and you're not a swindler. You're good people, you're good friends. You just have totally different objectives, and a partnership with different objectives cannot last. And therefore, you would just want to split up the partnership amicably and change the tone of it. So it's not only about getting the facts clear, but what is your mission statement? What is your purpose?
Think even once it's in writing.
Yes.
Define the right.
Define right. There's something called a mission statement. You start a business, have a mission statement. I've done many dinei Torah where you have, let's say someone opens a business, he hires a worker. The worker is totally dedicated to the business, built it up. Eventually something happens or they sell off the assets, and the worker thinks, I'm a partner. I'm not a thing. Look how hard I worked. I was totally dedicated. The owner says, you're a worker, a very dedicated worker. You are compensated properly or improperly. but you're not a partner. Now, usually the answer to this is, I ask the worker, you started off as a worker, tell me on which day did you become a partner, and tell me what mechanism made you a partner. And they can't answer, and they realize they don't have a case. Mm-hmm. But here again, if people have expectations, they should get it clear. That is the way you can avoid disputes. Once you have a dispute, the only eitzah is aid to actually bring it to a dinner, and dinner don't have to be acrimonious. You can just simply present, this is what I think, this is what I feel, this is my perspective in good faith, and let the Bezdin decide.
Mm-hmm. So there is the halacha component, and the Rav also mentioned the sermon opportunity that came about. I'm curious if there's ever, if it's appropriate or not for a dayan to say, listen, your parnasa was already decided in Rosh Hashanah. You got to let this go. Is that ever appropriate? Or?
No, because the dayan, it says, Ein merachmim b'din, you can't have mercy in judgment. Yaakov adina sahar. I can suggest before I know what the psak is, before I know in my head where this is heading, I could suggest you should compromise. But I cannot give a sermon because that's misusing my role. Although I happen in all the other dayanim on my bezdin are professional dayanim, and they've been dayanim the whole life. I was in the rabbinate for 25 plus years before I became the head of a bezdin, although I always served on the bezdin along the way, both in Washington Heights and in Gateshead. So, like I say, sometimes the rabbi in me has an urge to give a sermon, but even that has to be within the framework of people coming to a bezdin.
When would the Rav or any dayan know this is not a case for me? What are some of the objective metrics or questions that should be asked internally?
Well, anytime I have any personal connection with anyone, again, in some cases you're puzzled. You're invalidated because you're going to have some financial gain. But as a general rule, I and all the other dayanim recuse themselves if we have any personal connection with a person, although it would not necessarily invalidate us.
And is that almost like an honor system? Everyone decides for themselves, or
yes,
do dayanim say, I don't?
I can sometimes go to my fellow dayanim and say, this is my relationship. Do you think I should recuse myself? In other words, this person 8 years ago did work for me and didn't charge me. We have no connection in the last 8 years. Should I recuse myself? And they might say yes, they might say no, or they might say you should disclose it and offer to recuse yourself and see what the litigants do.
And what about suggesting to the other dayan, maybe you should not, the other way?
It works.
People know for themselves.
People know for themselves. I don't know. I come from the outside, so I don't know everyone's, entanglements and the like. But let's say one dayan recently said, I can't sit on this case because my daughter made a simcha and I stayed overnight by this person. Although it doesn't invalidate the person because it was before the din Torah, there's no quid pro quid, but nevertheless, I cannot do it.
There's some connection.
Right, there's some connection, and I would not I would not do it. We also try, before we take it to arbitration, to mediate it. I have on my bezdin 3 dayanim working under me besides alternates, and we try to appoint one of them as a mediator in cases where mediation is suitable. One of them is even a qualified mediator, and that person will try to mediate the case, and if not, they send it to arbitration. Now, to get people to speak freely to the mediator cannot tell the arbitrator anything he heard in mediation. It's all without prejudice, and he cannot repeat anything. He tries to mediate. If it doesn't work, then it goes to the bezdin, to the other 3 dayanim for arbitrations, especially in family matters, where, see, in financial judgments, many times after the din Torah, the relationship is over. But in family matters, even people getting divorced, they still have children, they still have, their lives are intertwined. So we try to encourage greatly mediation rather than litigation. But sometimes it doesn't work, so we go to litigation.
When it comes to financial Dinei Torah, of course there's gray, but you're dealing with a different ratio, proportion of emotions versus Gittin.
Yes.
When does a Bezdin suggest, I think we're not at that stage, you should do more counseling, or that's not the role of a Bezdin? How does that work?
Again, see, in the system we have in England, like you say, we have shuls. This couple was having difficulties, will have gone to their shul rabbi, and he would have sent them to counseling and thing. By the time they come to the head office, to the Bezdin, it's long beyond that.
So that's not the role of
that's not the role of the Bezdin. It's not like, you read in the storybooks, the husband and wife got into a fight and he dragged her to Bezdin. That's not the way, that's not the way it works itself. Furthermore, many of the Gittin we do are secular people who, in America, most people, if they're secular, you have no connection to religion. As opposed to in Europe, there are many people that are traditional, although they're personally not observant. They will get married religiously, they will get divorced religiously. So these people might be separated, they might be legally divorced, civilly divorced for some time already, and when they're coming to the Bezdin, it is just a religious finality or a technicality in their eyes. And we just have to make it as pleasant of an experience as we could.
What about Mekach Tos? I mean, that's obviously, so many years of yeshiva, so many sugyas that we learn, but in real life in a Bezdin, does that ever come up?
In financial cases, yes. In marital cases, no. Because a Mekach Tos in a marriage would have to be that there was something hidden, which is so egregious that no one would want to be married to such a person. And the first moment someone found out about it, they walked out.
It's a high bar.
It's a very, very high bar. And it doesn't happen.
So outside, Basula, Ba'ula, are there any examples that have ever come up that either reached that or got close to?
You want to know if a person was a paranoid schizophrenic and they didn't disclose it and it wasn't obvious to everyone and nobody knew about it, and the second the person found out about it, and it's an incurable case, and the second the person found out about it, they walked out of the marriage, then we'd start thinking about it. Practically nobody goes in that direction.
Wow. Now getting to the other part of the Ravs, getting so many shilas both locally, nationally, and internationally. When it comes to halacha, of course, many things are taken into account, but when it comes to hadrachas, there's really no beginning, there's no end. When the Rav's not in the community where one is asking a shaila, how does the Rav know how to give hadracha without being, like, so to speak, boots on the ground?
I don't give hadracha. Again, in the role that I am now, when I was, let's say, the Rav of Gatesitz, I was the communal Rav, and I lived together with these people. In the role that I am now, I advise Rabbanan. They are the ones who meet with the people involved. They do the intake. They understand the personalities. And they at most come to me and say, this is the equation as they see it. What do you suggest? But I don't all that often meet with people and give them hadracha directly. This is in England where it happens to be my position. And I have students all over the world, even here in Columbus, Ohio. And it's the same thing. I'm relying on that person's assessment of the situation and just applying my life experience to that person's assessment. I'm not assessing it myself.
Right. Typically speaking, when this situation's here, this is what should be done.
This is what's normal.
But I'm granting that this is the assessment.
That is your assessment, and I don't know anything about the assessment.
There's a big question that's always asked, so many different ways you go about this, like when to ask a shaila, who to ask a shaila, what is das Torah, all these different, hot things that people like to bring up. So I guess let's start in order. When should a Rav realize this is above my pay grade, if you will?
There's a pay grade for every Rav. It just depends where it,
Uh-huh.
where it is. And sometimes I think that congregants have too great expectations of a Rav. If a person's a Rav, let's say, because he learned Yeridea, he learned the laws of kashrus, the laws of family purity, so don't ask him a Chayshim Mishpat question. He's not a Dayan. Or don't ask him an Ebenezer question. And don't expect him to know it. And the person also has to know, what is it I know and what is it I don't know. And that's an halacha which is pretty concrete. The next thing is people go to Rabbanim for advice. Now, what type of advice should a Rav be giving and what not? So I described yesterday in the shul here, when a couple comes to me with a shalom bayis issue of marital discord, what I do is make an assessment. Is this a marital issue, a relationship issue, or is this a personal issue impacting the marriage? They're fundamentally different. Right. If it's now how do I know if it's a personal issue impacting the marriage? Well, if the issue existed before the marriage, it can't be a marital issue. If it'll exist after the marriage, it'll also not a marital issue. If it would exist if they were married to someone else, it's also not a marital issue. A marital issue means two people that are basically stable, who don't know how to relate to each other, don't know how to communicate to each other, might have the wrong expectations. I only deal if it's the latter. If it's someone who needs education or moral guidance, I will do so. The second that I see, and could probably figure this out within the first 15, 20, 30 minutes, that it's a personal issue which is impacting upon the marriage, I say, go to the requisite professional who deals with this. I'm not qualified to do it, and nor should I be doing it. And this is something I keep on telling. I've trained Rabbanim all over the world. I graduated 56 Kiruv rabbis in all my years in Ar Sameach, and I keep up with them. And in England and in various places, I think is, like I say, know what is a rabbi's job and what is the expectation of a rabbi, but it's not the rabbi's job, and you shouldn't be doing it. Stick to what you're good at.
I think most of our listeners are not shul rabbanim, so the Rav who gets to see the rabbanim of our listeners, so to speak, what would the Rav suggest the congregants, so to speak, to bear in mind with their relationship with their Rav, being that the Rav gets to see it from a different perspective?
So there's different things. One, a Rav is a person, not an object. That's step number one. People tend to relate to their Rav as an object. He's a person, has feelings, has a family, has good days, has bad days, and he's not an object. That's number one. Number two, don't exceed the expectations to what you have a right to expect from the person, because then you'll become disillusioned.
Cool.
If you think someone is greater than they are, and you have no reason for thinking so, then when you find out that it's not so, then you become disillusioned. This is what Master Solomon told me. And one of the greatest things is we sort of deify all our Rabbanim, and then when we find out they're not gods, they're regular human beings, all of a sudden we get disillusioned with all of Judaism, when it is really you're just false expectations. So that's in how you look at the person. Also, like I say, ask a rabbi advice in something that you're expecting a rabbi to know the answer to. If it's something that requires, if you need medical advice, go to a doctor. If you need psychological advice, go to a psychologist. The rabbi can support you in your journey, which that's very important, giving support. The person should feel that they're not alone. But it doesn't mean that they have to solve it, or that they should be solving it. And if people have more realistic expectations, then they're more satisfied.
Wow. Getting to Shalom Bayis, of course, I would imagine with the rise in divorce rates, that must take up a lot of time for the average Rav. When should one be going to a Rav for Shalom Bayis versus going to a therapist? What order, what levels? Broad
Like
picture.
I say, I think people will go to the Rav as a first responder.
Object.
Yeah. No, it's a first responder.
Uh-huh.
I'm having problems.
In a good
Tell
way.
me, yeah, just
Okay,
guide
okay.
me. But like I say, the Rav himself should be able to discern whether this is something that they can deal with, which is in the realm of education, or no, this is something in the realm of medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and that person should should send it off. People will naturally from communities go to the Rav first, but it doesn't mean the Rav is in charge of everybody's Shalom Bayis.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, even the greatest Rabbanim in the world would never give advice on the Shalom Bayis matter. Let's say, get divorced. They would help a person clarify the situation until they come to the conclusion on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons are as follows. There are three reasons. One, only the person themselves is going to live with the consequence of the decision, and they have to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Number two, if you make a decision for someone else, then you'll get blamed for the decision later. That's just self-protection.
Yeah.
But the third reason is as follows. Many times people come, more typically women, they're in an abusive situation, the controlled, coercive, controlling situation. Tell the rabbi, tell me what to do. Should I get out? If the rabbi tells them to get out, they're also being controlling. It might be benevolent control rather than malicious control, but it's exactly the same control issue.
Coming from a different
angle.
Right, right.
And it was asked for, but it doesn't make a difference. Mm-hmm. That will not heal the person. The person has to take hold of their own life. Mm-hmm. So the rabbi can, like I say, mirror to the person what they're hearing, clarify to the person, strengthen the person, remind them of their strengths, because many times people in very bad relationships, they get so knocked that their sense of personality falls apart. And you have to keep on reminding the person of their milas, of who they are. And that's what you could do, but you should not be making decisions for anyone.
Now, for the Rabbanim who will be listening, sometimes you hear people say, yeah, Rabbanim, they have to know how to be like politicians. They have to know how to navigate things. And there's an element of truth to that. Just going to the political arena for a moment, just to bring out a point. A lot of people, we had a congressman on about a year ago, a great friend, and anyone could listen to it, with Congressman Michael Rulli. And we were talking about the climate of today's politics, in America and probably around the world too. But the mashal that was given was like tackle football. It's the sport. It's not one player being mean to the other. This is the arena. It's like boxing. This is
right.
And unfortunately, then a lot of really good people don't want to go into it, who are probably more deserving, better equipped, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in the world of Rabbanis, it comes with a very high level of tension, because really people's Yiddishkeit is their identity. So, rightfully comes very charged, very emotionally charged. What advice would the Rav give to the Rabbanim who are already in that position, or those who are considering, to know, if it's right for them in terms of they have that backbone, that stolz, healthy stolz, and then how to weather the storms when they come? Not if, but when they come.
I would say, again, one has to be able to assess one's own personality and character traits. Two, you need to have peer support. Rabbanim must interact with each other. His expression is very lonely at the top. And the rabbi is at the top of his congregation. And therefore, but if he has friends that are in the rabbinate, or just even peers, and they talk together, that will help the person navigate things. And they should also have a mentor and a supervisor that they refer back to. And if in the end this person's not suited for it, they say the rabbinate's not a profession for a nice Jewish boy, You have to be suited for it.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to support, I imagine outside the city, because sometimes Rabbi the one say, "Hey, no, I want him to be there or her to be in my shul."
No,
outside
no.
the city.
You go outside the city.
Mm-hmm.
You go outside of your sphere. It could be your chaverim from yeshiva. It could be other people, but it's an absolute necessity. Even just besides being successful, being sane. It's just maintaining your sanity. You need support.
And one last question on this topic: when it comes to rabbanim in the community, every community has more than one rabbi, generally speaking. It's just a question of how many, and then within how many, how wide, or not wide, the differences are between them. Any practical advice in terms of the shalom bayis, if you will, within rabbanim?
I think you have to respect each other, and the respect partially comes from, mostly, let's say, in every community, there are different types of groups, and each group needs its own shul. You wouldn't want them in your shul. So you have to recognize that this person is not your competition, or that person might be your competition, but they're doing you a favor, because if not, you would have to minister to these people. And many times this is the approach I take. I would like to minister to a certain group of people that I'm suited for, and I have a lot of akaras hatayv, that I have a lot of gratitude that other people are ministering to a different group of people. They might not be doing it the way I would do it, or the way I even think it's right to do it, but I'd rather not say anything, because I have a lot of gratitude that they are addressing this crowd and allowing me to focus on what I think I am good at. And then all of a sudden you look at it like this person is really helping me, and then you respect what the person is doing.
Is it okay for a Rav to say to their balabat, and I have a difference of opinion with this, Rav, just like parents could say, we're one in the mishpacha, we're one in the family, but like mommy and daddy, we see things a little differently, and we make it work because our relationship is more important than any one issue. Is there anything wrong with saying, this rabbi and I are...
Inherently not, or objectively speaking not. Subjectively, you have to know what are the communal politics. Listen, rabbanim, to succeed in communal politics, there are only two ways I found. Either you're a master politician, or you're totally politically incorrect. If you're a master politician, you can navigate everything. No one even ever know what your opinion is and thing. Or you're so politically incorrect that nobody has any expectation of you. He's good at what he's good at, and they don't expect you to navigate it. When you try to do in the middle and you're not really good at it, that's where you're going to suffer.
Interesting. Pick one.
I've always tried to be totally as politically incorrect as
incorrect,
and therefore, people don't expect, that you have to be kind to everyone and the like.
So interesting.
This rabbi tells it as it is. You don't want to hear it as it is, so don't go to it.
So interesting. Wow. And one's not necessarily better or worse than the other. It's just what's a better fit.
Better fit for your own personality.
Interesting. Wow. And what about the notion of, everyone needs to put their shul first? And then there's the question of like, what if it's at the expense of another shul? Are there any general questions that Rabban should ask themselves that like, of course I put my kila first, but if it, affects another shul, then we shouldn't do it, or what, they have to deal with that, and we have to work with it. Was there any general advice?
The general advice is, let's say, chayecha kaidmim, or your chandas always comes before someone else's, but that's only when it's equal. In other words, let's say in tzedakah, you're supposed to give to your family before you give to members of a city, before you give to members of a different city. What happens if the person in a different city is starving? The person in your city is not starving but could need help, and the person in your family just needs something extra. So the overriding principle is who has the greatest need. So when needs are equal, then me first. When needs are not equal, then you have to balance out the needs.
Interesting. Wow, what a way to look at it. Amazing. We are recording this during Aseres Mei-Tshuva, and there's always an extra emphasis on knowing that Yom Kippur is mechaper. It's for mitzvahs and averos for ben adam lamalkan, for one, to their creator. But when it comes to bin adam lachavere, one to another person needs to ask bechila, needs to ask forgiveness, which I think really needs a serious conversation, which is, what is mechila? Oh, I forgive someone. So like, what changed? Pre-answering to post-asking and post-answering. Can we define mechila?
So there is a halacha question. What happens, I ask someone, are you meichel me? And they say yes, due to social pressure, but they don't mean it in their heart. Mm-hmm. Is that a mechila? Reb Nissen Karelitz in Hilchos Yom Kippur quotes his uncle, the Chazon Ish, saying no, because the person doesn't mean it. So he asked him, what do you mean, dvarim shebelev lehavi dvarim? So he answered him, Iker mechila belev. The mechila, it comes from the heart. Wow. However, in the Sefer Zikaron Even Tzion, he quotes Reb Reuven Grozovsky as quoting the Alta of Kelm, that if a person says, Machalach b'peh, dvarim shebelev lehavi dvarim. There's a famed lamdan in Lakewood called Rav Moshe Shimon Shapiro, who says he asked Rav Moshe Feinstein this question.
Yeah.
And Moshe said, it's like a mechila of a chayiv. If someone says machalach on a chayiv, even if he doesn't mean it, it is forgiving.
Interesting.
And I would add that even on a chayiv, it's only if he doesn't mean it, it's dvarim shebelev. But if it's beliboy belev kol adam that he doesn't mean it, then it won't work on a chayiv either. So there's two different approaches to mechila. If the person says he was meichel b'peh, it didn't mean it believe, is it valid or not?
In other words, it's a machlekes.
It's a machlekes like everything else, yes. That is number one. That is from the perspective of the person giving the mechila. From the perspective of the person asking mechila, that does require a lein, because the person, if it's insincere, the person will very likely see through it, and very likely say, no, I'm not meichel you. And then you're in worse shape.
We went backwards, yeah.
You went backwards. And therefore, the Chazon Ish says, never ask a favor from someone unless you know for sure they're going to grant it. Don't say, I'll ask. And the worst thing is they'll say no. Because anytime a person tells no to another person, it takes the relationship backwards. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the person has to put themselves in the other person's shoes and see how they feel about it and sincerely regret it and transmit that.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So getting to the, I don't know if there's a one-word definition for mechila, but how do we explain it in the most simple terms possible? What is mechila?
It's the person who allegedly wronged someone else appeases the other person. Appeases. And the person who was allegedly wronged forgives. So the word mechila can be used as appeasement or forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. When
it says, "Ein avera ben al mechaverai, ein yem akipurim mechaper ad sheratza es chaverai." It requires an appeasement.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a time where someone should ask mechila, not that they really need to, but just maybe leman hasham? For example, if someone knows objectively, they spoke to someone, they're 100% in the right, is there maybe just leman hasham?
Well, we always tell people, if you're right, then you certainly should ask mechila, because it doesn't bother you. If you're wrong, you still have to ask mechila. Goes the other way. It's much easier to ask mechila when
so there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong.
That is correct.
Last Sunday, there was a big headline in the national news, maybe even international news, of Erica Kirk forgiving the assassin, the one who assassinated her husband, Charlie Kirk. What is the Torah hashkafa when it comes to forgiving someone who committed a black and white atrocity?
Again, it's impressive, but it's not Jewish. It's very Christian, turning the other cheek. Bottom line is, you forgive people who regret what they did and make restitution on what they did. Someone stole from you, they regret it, they give it back, and they ask mechila. I don't have any obligation, nor does it make all that much sense to forgive someone who doesn't regret what they did. They're very happy with what they did. They're never going to make restitution. I don't think I don't see anything in the Torah that will
But in regards to like a person feeling that there's closure, like I turned a page, can it help in that sense at least? Like I forgive the pain, I can't undo what happened, but at least now I come to that.
Does it have a psychological benefit? Maybe yes.
And is it okay, allowed?
It's allowed. Yeah, I don't see that it's not allowed. I just don't see it as a Jewish value.
Not the Jewish value. And in closing, we hope to at least release this clip of the interview before Yom Kippur. Does the Rav have any practical suggestions, both Bein Adam La'Maka and Bein Adam La'Chaverei, for people to take with them into the Yom Hadin?
You go to the Yom Hadin, and a person, on one hand, you regret all your shortcomings, and you say, I wish it wasn't so. But at the same time, change is incremental. It does not happen. You don't turn from a sinner to a saint in 10 days, or certainly during the Ilah. After that, it's a process. And therefore, what you're looking at is, this is a process. A process of change that I'm going to go about. This process might take 50 years. It might even take 200 years to reach there. Rav Eliezer says that tshuva means misyatzev al derech toiv. I'm heading in the right direction. And therefore, people, after they regret everything and they express their aspiration to be perfect, now they have to come up with a practical plan. How will I become perfect? By very small incremental steps, no matter how long it will take.
Beautiful. I want to thank the Rav so much for being on the show, and much continued hatzlacha with everything that we
Amazing. Thank you.
To listen to all Kolot episodes and see upcoming guests, visit kolotpodcast.com. We are also on all podcast players. Type in Kolot on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, and Amazon. Share with your friends, and please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Kolot is a project of the Columbus Community Kollel, a full-time Jewish learning center in Bexley, staffed with high-caliber Torah scholars. Ever since 1995, boys, girls, men, and women from all backgrounds and affiliations have found many opportunities to connect with Torah and mitzvos at the Kollel. Whether it's a study partner, an engaging lesson, or a program, the Kollel is your one-stop shop for all your Jewish learning. If you want to know how you can benefit from the Kollel, visit thekollel.org. That is TheKollel.org, and forever be inspired.